Radioactivity. I'm Rob Lurie. We're going to talk about the massacre in Connecticut last Friday when we open up the phones in a few minutes. But first, at the top of the show today, the British newspaper, the Daily Mail, is reporting that the mother of Newtown killer Adam Lanza was a survivalist who trained her son to shoot and had been stockpiling weapons and food in anticipation of the apocalypse. Nancy Lanza began hoarding food and water because she feared the ongoing financial crisis was going to bring about the end of civilized society. Some other people believe the ancient Mayan people thought the end of the world would take place this coming Friday on December 21st. It's unclear if Ms. Lanza thought that was the case. The Daily Mail goes on to report that the 54-year-old woman reportedly became obsessed with guns and taught her sons how to shoot. Dan Holmes, who looked after the large garden around her rambling home, recalled how Ms. Lanza would often go target shooting with her boys. She was the first to die in last week's bloody rampage, shot 4 times in the head before Lanza drove to the Sandy Hook Elementary School in her car and then gunned down 20 children and 6 adults, then shot himself in the head. Authorities said the massacre could have been far worse because enough ammunition was found on the younger Lanza's body for him to carry out significant additional carnage. The gunman's aunt, Marcia Lanza, said that Ms. Lanza was a member of the Doomsday Preppers survivalist movement and had turned her home into a fortress. She was stockpiling food. She grew up on a farm in New Hampshire. She was skilled with guns. We talked about preppers and preparing for the economy collapsing, said Marcia Lanza. Well, we're going to talk about Doomsday Preppers on the first part of today's program with Rob Van Alkenmade, who is a filmmaker, and he's done a new film about the Doomsday Preppers. And Rob, welcome to WMNF. It's good to have you on the radio.
Thank you so much.
So I want to play some sound from your film, and this is going to be on the National Geographic Channel. But let's listen to a little bit of the sound from your film, and then let's talk about it.
I have intuited some things. I've felt some things were wrong, some things were off. Then I use my scientific background to prove it. And I've done research, and I've done tons and tons of research, and the kind of research that most people wouldn't have time for anymore. This event, to be honest with you, my conclusions are that it answers everything in prophecy of the end times. It's not by chance at all that we hit the galactic center exactly at the end of the Mayan calendar, which tells me that the Mayans had synchronized their calendar with the harmonic motion of not just Earth, but the whole solar system. As we get closer and closer, we're going to see rivers turning to blood, life in the oceans dying, the earthquake, the deluge, the conflagration, and when we hit the galactic center, I expect that to go off the chart exponentially. This event is what you have to prepare for if you choose to survive.
Fue un gran desastre que debajo sobre el volcán. Pues no sabemos nosotros, por ejemplo, trabajamos y pescamos, no sabemos todavía. Pero gracias a Dios a ustedes que nos dieron esa noticia, pues nosotros podemos saber cómo pues logramos nuestra vida. Sí, claro. Sí.
The ancient Maya said next to nothing about the year 2012. But as it turns out, many different oral traditions do speak of an imminent period of radical transformation of one form or another. Actually, every single elder that I've spoken to in Belize, Guatemala, and Mexico has said virtually the same thing. There is this sense of pending massive societal transformation.
In the book of Revelations, it says in the days of tribulation will be 42 months. There is what they call a Mayan prophecy that their calendar ends in 2012.
I suggest you turn around. You won't even have time.
Don't worry, because it won't matter. More than 99% of people will die in this cataclysm. The only force that can save you is yourself, well prepared.
We had a black widow have babies here. There's like 1 billion of them, and we've had some problems.
I will heap mischief upon them. I will spend mine arrows upon them. Arrows are missiles, of course. They shall be burnt with hunger and devoured with burning heat. So just, comforting scriptures, all kinds of scriptures.
Everyone thought Noah was crazy, and then what did they do? I think they probably bag right before they choked on the rain. I can do this with my eyes closed, so I'm not on camera. Son of a...
Well, that's part of the soundtrack for the film Training for the Apocalypse, and the director is with us right now, Rob Van Alkemade. And Rob, the last guy that we see in that film is a guy who's heavily armed. Just describe what we the visuals that go along with that as we were listening to that sound.
Okay, yeah, that's Anonymous. He lives a few miles from me in Los Angeles, and I think he probably was not as emotionally disturbed as he portrays himself as. I think he was probably hamming it up and sort of satirizing himself for the camera, but I'm not sure. I figure he's not one of the people that would be flagged for mental illness and have his weapons justifiably taken away. But yeah, he's playing with a lot of guns for us.
How many guns did this guy have, Anonymous?
He had with him enough ammunition to keep himself happy for a long time, and a shotgun and a rifle, I believe, and a couple of pistols.
The other folks, we heard about black widow spiders giving birth, having a lot of babies. These are folks that have essentially dug a hole in the ground and are, it looks like they're living under their house. I mean, describe that for a moment.
Well, not quite as dramatic as that. There is, by the way, Doomsday Preppers is a series on Nat Geo, not to be confused with my humble little observational documentary, Training for the Apocalypse, which, just a spoiler alert for a second, I can't help but admit that the world does not end next week. And as we heard from the local Mayan fishermen in Guatemala, a lot of folks are not even thinking about the world ending. It was sort of a contrived misunderstanding by Western writers for the most part. And so where were we? Yeah, there's some folks with bunkers and some folks with cults. And there's also some very life-affirming groups that we worked with. Survive and Thrive in Philadelphia was one of those that accepts all folks from all backgrounds and faiths and religions. They just keep politics and religion out of it and teach each other the skills that they specialize in, whether it's preparation for nuclear war or 2-week blackout, where you'd want to take care of your kids and hunker down for a little while.
So, Rob, how big would you say this movement is?
I just have no idea, sorry. The folks that we met were just a handful. We had Fernando of Survive and Thrive, the sort of the voice of reason from the mainstream prepper movement. We spoke to Mayan elders in Guatemala, most of which, Mayan folks just on the streets as well, most of which had not heard of the 2012 prophecies. We spoke with Leland, a prophet with a small congregation in Utah, and Brian, an independent thinker also in Utah, pretty heavily armed, and brags that his guns aren't registered and teaches his kids to shoot as soon as they can pick up a gun. But ironically, I personally don't feel that Brian is much more of a danger than some parents I've seen at the mall.
What do you think's motivating those folks? How do they get into the survivalist movement?
Well, again, very disparate reasons. I imagine Fernando, the voice of reason, I was expecting his motivation to be the founder of the Survive and Thrive group to have been that he grew up in abject poverty and had a lot of abuse from his mother and ended up squatting for much of his childhood in some of the worst neighborhoods in Philly. Turned out that certainly was part of his skill set and inspiration for being self-sufficient, but his real epiphany came after a DMT experience where he had a drill sergeant voice analyze his status in the world and tell him, okay, you're all buttoned up for your own preparations now. How about everybody else?
DMT?
Yes, sort of a naturally occurring chemical that is triggered in our sleep, apparently, dimethyltryptamine, a very powerful hallucinogen that it comes from the ayahuasca. I'm eager to try it myself at some point.
So sort of like mescaline or psilocybin or something like that?
Something like that. I think a little bit more powerful and profound to a lot of folks.
Well, we're talking with the director of a new film called Training for the Apocalypse, which highlights and follows 3 survivalists who are preparing for the upcoming Doomsday, which is this Friday. Do they all share in common a belief that they've got to have weapons in order to survive Doomsday?
No, definitely not. Survive and Thrive, for example, it's a pretty big group, couple hundred active members, and a lot of folks are very anti-gun. A lot of folks are also going out of their way to manifest positive thinking and philosophies, not locking their doors and not arming up. Fernando, the founder, does carry a pistol and does leave his doors open. He's sort of a dichotomy there, sort of an enigma. Brian, of course, heavily armed. Leland, fairly armed, yes. But most of his inspiration, this is the older gentleman that resembles Santa Claus in the film. His main inspiration, I would think, it's pretty clear in the film, without us meddling in the narrative, is to get some more girlfriends, to be honest.
Well, before Friday, were you surprised when the Daily Mail and some other news outlets reported that the mother of this shooter on Friday was a survivalist? Did that come as a shock to you as you found that out?
I guess I'm not shocked, but everyone is desperately making correlations, trying to explain the unexplainable, and I don't see yet a natural connection between the two. I don't even see personally a huge problem with shooting with your children unless they do have mental illness or a personality disorder. Then I think it's probably a pretty terrible decision.
I want to go back to why these people are survivalists and why some of them are buying guns and preparing for the end. Is there a common media outlet that they listen to, or is there a common book that they've read, or a common newspaper they subscribe to, or a website that they trust? Or is there anything in common that makes them believe that society is about to fall apart?
Not my folks, really. There's a very strong independent streak with Brian, the armed father. He originally is a member of the Kingdom of God, this small clan run by Leland in Utah, and breaks off from it when he gets suspicious of the motives there. He gets his information from all over the place. That group is mostly exiled Mormons, but I would never suggest that Mormonism leads to prepperism, although every good Mormon does stockpile about a year's worth of supplies, just in case, which I really, it's a long time, a year, but I could see the logic behind it.
Brian talks about the Federal Reserve, he's very suspicious of Federal Reserve notes, and I wondered, are these folks conservative politically, or how do they share anything in common politically?
Well, surprisingly, I was never asked about my politics and was quite embraced in every group. Very liberal folks over in Survive and Thrive, and conservatives and agnostics and non-practicing political types. We had pretty conservative leanings over in Leland's house in Utah, but again, not exactly the main platform. Racism, misogyny, and self-serving fear-mongering, I guess, would be the main staples of that group, in my opinion. And Brian, occasionally he'd say stuff that sounded totally reasonable and even inspiring to me, and sometimes he'd say stuff that would make it very, very difficult for me to walk back into the house. But usually about race, not so much about politics, other than not trusting any politician.
Well, we're talking about a new film which highlights actually three groups of survivalists. It's called Training for the Apocalypse, and the film's director is with us just for a few more minutes, Rob Van Alcamade, and are you in Southern California, Rob? Is that where you are?
I'm in Los Angeles, the epicenter of where you wouldn't want to be in a time of cataclysm.
So how are these folks preparing for this coming Friday? Do they all think that the world's going to end on Friday, that there's going to be a cataclysm on Friday?
Well, no, I sure don't think so. I think Leland actually was prophesizing 2012 for our benefit, realizing that was one of the things we were investigating when we met up with him first in 2008. He also conveniently decided, and surprisingly decided, that the very next day, Inauguration Day for President Obama, was going to be the beginning of the end. In Washington, D.C., there would be a nuclear bomb, and that apparently didn't work out, but he's never quit on prophesizing doomsday during bomb season, which is December. And he just sent me another email recently warning me that this is really going to be the one.
I think there's a moment in your film where Leland is reading the Bible and he takes the word abomination, abomination, and mispronounces it and calls it Obamination. Is that
indeed? Yeah, and then they have an argument. Well, there's a whole lot of wordplay in his sermons, and this one just seemed to naturally fill in the gaps where he wanted to insinuate some prophecy, I guess. This is a Obama nation and an abomination, and you get to mix humor with your racism, and everyone has a good time.
So, of the groups that have guns, how many think that the government's about to take away their guns?
I didn't hear about that so much with my folks. Probably the Survive and Thrive group. Well, possibly. I don't want to make assumptions on their behalf. So I'm really just one guy that visited all these folks infrequently over a few years. Maybe there would be more folks in that group concerned with this. Brian bragged about not having any gun registered, so perhaps he's not expecting anyone to come by. He resents streets, so you don't have to go too deep and start suspecting too many things with Brian. He starts with the basics.
Well, he resents streets, meaning that any form of government, including streets and sewers, are wrong?
Fundamentally suspect, at least, if not wrong. I believe so.
So some of the people in your film, not the Guatemalans that you interviewed, but the folks here in this country believe the world's going to end on Friday. What are you going to do on Friday?
I haven't actually thought about it, to be honest. I've been pretty busy lately, but I did just have my first baby. His name is Victor, and I'm sure I'll hug him a lot and not worry too much.
Rob, thanks a lot. Where can people see the film?
You can, Nat Geo should have it up again soon. You can also order a DVD through Nat Geo website or Amazon, and I can keep you posted at finaltraining.org.
Well, Rob, thanks a lot. Is there anything else you want to tell us about survivalists?
Not so much. I just want to have a nice, peaceful morning, and I wish your listeners the same. And I hope we can learn some constructive lessons from the horrible events last week. And I also want to thank your radio station. I grew up actually in the Sarasota-Bradenton area during some of my apocalyptic years, and your station really helped me out.
Rob, thanks a lot. It's good to talk to you.
Same here. Thank you.
All right, thanks. That's Rob Van Alkemade, who's made a new film called Training for the Apocalypse, and you can see it on the National Geographic channel.